Welcome back to the Rewilded Wellness Podcast. Today, I am going to be diving deep into the vagus nerve, that incredible information superhighway connecting your brain to your organs. And before I get started, I want to remind everyone to check out my last episode with Dan Kittredge, where we discussed the nutrient density connection via soil health and how it's become I don't know how hidden it is, but it has been, but it's becoming more apparent to those of us who care deeply about our food system and our health collectively. Truly nutrient dense food has become a lot harder to find. And Dan has an amazing vision for creating tools that are going to allow farmers, retailers, and consumers to be able to quantify the nutritional value of their food. So I'm super stoked about the work that he's doing in the world, and chatting with him was really inspiring. And I've gotten a lot of great feedback from people who have reached back out and told me that they've already checked out the episode. So if you haven't heard it yet, go back, listen to it. It matters to all of us. And then you can see if you want to support the Bionutrient Food Association in any way. Also, if you have been hanging out with me, enjoying the podcast and finding value in it, I would be so grateful if you could share it with anyone else who you think might benefit. And it would also really help me reach more people if you could leave a review on whatever podcast platform that you're listening to. Takes just a minute. You can just open your podcast app, search for this show, scroll down to the reviews section and tap write a review and just take a few minutes. It just makes a huge difference in helping others discover this information I've been sharing. So I appreciate you and I thank you in advance if you do that. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started on today's topic, the vagus nerve, and how I'm going to talk a little bit about the minerals and micros piece, as well as the functional testing that can help. And we're gonna get into a lot more than the typical vagus nerve hacks that are swirling around Instagram and YouTube and all these videos and such. So as you know, I work with a functional test called hair tissue mineral analysis. So there's a lot of information within that test about our biochemistry that we can see. So first things first, the vagus nerve, which is often called our wandering nerve, it's the longest cranial nerve in our body, and it extends from the brainstem through the neck into the chest and abdomen. And it's responsible for regulating numerous bodily functions, including our heart rate, digestion, immune response, and our stress recovery systems. And so what many people don't realize is that mineral patterns revealed in the hair analysis can give us incredible insights into vagus nerve function. So I'm going to share that. First, when I look at a HTMA, there's certain mineral relationships that directly correlate with vagal tone and function. So the first would be the calcium to magnesium ratio, particularly when it is elevated. This can indicate sympathetic nervous system dominance, essentially like being stuck in fight or flight mode, if you will, which is the opposite of healthy vagal tone. Calcium has a sedative effect on the nervous system, while magnesium helps activate and relax it. So when calcium dominates excessively over magnesium, it can create a paradoxical effect where a person might feel kind of like wired and tired simultaneously, right? Deep down, they're kind of exhausted, but they can't like relax into the parasympathetic state, which is needed for vagal tone. So, this can manifest as anxiety and sleep disturbances and digestive issues. And these are all classic signs of poor vagal function. And then, of course, the calcium to phosphorus ratio is another critical ratio for assessing the nervous system health. They kind of work in opposition. So calcium slows things down while phosphorus speeds them up. And so if someone has an elevated calcium to phosphorus ratio, this can indicate like a sluggish metabolic rate. We often call this like a slow one, a slow oxidative type. And it correlates with like a parasympathetic dominance, but in an unhealthy way. I always tell people it's like driving with the parking brake on, right? It's not this more balanced parasympathetic activation that we want for good vagal tone, like to be able to regulate, to be able to go between, you know, the uh fight or flight to the parasympathetic in a healthy manner, right? It's more of a state of metabolic shutdown. So, but then conversely, a very low calcium to phosphorus ratio can suggest more of a sympathetic dominance with hyperexcitability and some nervous system hypersensitivity. So, for optimal vagal function, we want this ratio balanced. We want it hanging out right there in that middle space, versus one extreme or the other. And this really can help support appropriate parasympathetic engagement without any, metabolic stagnation. So these two ratios, these two calcium ratios, the calcium magnesium and calcium to phosphorus, both kind of provide this more complete picture of our nervous system balance and then therefore our vagal health rather than either one alone. So they can just help me see if someone's, kind of where someone is in that uh nervous system pattern that they're in, right? Are they experiencing a fight or flight dominance? Are they in an unhealthy metabolic shutdown? Or are they balanced, right? Is that piece working well? And if so, that's great. So then there's also the potassium marker, so low potassium, which is incredibly common. I myself have had that marker for a really long time. Low potassium on a HTMA signals insufficient nerve energy, adrenal fatigue, because it correlates with the mineralocorticoid production that the adrenals and kidneys are responsible for. And this really can impact our vagal tone significantly. So we could say the vagus nerve requires adequate potassium to maintain proper signaling and electrical conductivity. There's a lot more behind why a potassium level can be low, but suffice it to say, someone's going to really benefit from at least making sure for a first step that they're really paying attention to their potassium consumption in their diet and drinks. Then we have the copper to zinc ratio. So if someone has a copper excess, if you will, or a zinc deficiency, that pattern can create neurotransmitter chaos, right? And that is definitely going to be seen in people with compromised vagal function. Both of these minerals are really crucial for neurotransmitter activity that the vagus nerve depends on. So that's another way we can kind of see that there's issues going on. And then the phosphorus levels, particularly low phosphorus, is a really big deal because this indicates like a cellular energy crisis and poor protein assimilation. And it can indicate gut dysbiosis issues as well. If it's really low and it's like a chronically low phosphorus. But, all of this is critical for proper nerve function. So when you don't have adequate cellular energy, your vagus nerve simply can't like just turn on your digestion effectively. And then heavy metals, of course. So, things like mercury, lead, or aluminum, they pretty much actively hijack your vagus nerve. They like can kind of like get into your mineral binding sites and, steal that place that their minerals are supposed to be, right? And this can create like traffic jams in your nerve signaling, if you will. It can drain your cellular batteries and definitely will, trigger the, kind of like inflammatory roadblocks, if you will. So, you can think of your vagus nerve as your digestive system's power cord. And so mineral imbalances and heavy metals definitely are going to create short circuits in this system. So, you know, I think there's a lot going on out there in the world of people trying to find ways to support themselves. We can buy supplements galore. And, when people struggle with digestive symptoms, they might just go and buy digestive aids, right? Like they're lining the shelves of many places now, right? But like if you keep needing them forever and ever, this is really an indicator that you need to repair the communication system. Um, Really, that's a primary thing we need to do. And we can do so by addressing the foundational mineral imbalances. So, and then two, like, there's a lot of breathing exercises and people talking about cold plunges and all these kinds of things. But really, you know, it's really important to understand your specific internal imbalances, right? Because then that's going to provide a better roadmap to target the vagus nerve support you need. Um, sometimes those things can be good for certain people, but like, we're hearing so much about all this kind of stuff and it's just not specific enough and personalized enough. And in some cases, it's actually really bad for certain people, like depending on the type of breathing exercise you're trying to do right out of the gate. And most people should not be doing cold plunges. It's just not necessarily the best path, even though they're trendy. Um, so then we can talk about like the gut vagus connection, and how your microbiome and vagus nerve create this bidirectional highway of communication. And I use a functional test called the Biome FX. And I've been able to start to identify like specific blocks in the microbiome. So after the brain, the gut contains the second largest neural system in the body, right? That's the enteric nervous system. And the vagus nerve connects approximately like 100 million nerve cells from your gut to your brain, which is crazy that we have that going on in our body. That's wild. And this creates a critical two-way channel. So, this explains why gut issues so often manifest as like anxiety or brain fog or mood disorders, um, because it's your vagus nerve transmitting distress signals. So every millimeter of your gut has vagus nerve endings, which is why any type of GI symptom really should prompt people to start working with their vagus nerve immediately. So when the gut has problems, we can even see vasomotor and vasovagal symptoms that extend, beyond digestion. So here's a few. There's probably a lot more, but here's a few signs of compromised vagal function. Um, Food is like sitting like a rock in your stomach. You have a sense of like fullness in your stomach, like a bowling ball or like just lead or like whatever people say, right? Just kind of sitting in there and it feels heavy after you eat. Or maybe you have constant bloating, or maybe you have acid reflux. Even if you have low stomach acid, you can have acid reflux. If you start like with supplements, but then you stop taking them and then your symptoms return, or maybe the supplements only help a little bit for a little while and then they don't, right? Multiple food sensitivities kind of showing up. Maybe you have a SIBO diagnosis. If you're someone who's unable to relax after stress, that's your nervous system. And then just like unpredictable digestion. which I'm hearing a lot more these days. So when I look at the biome effects, there's some really cool things, markers that provide insights into where someone's vagus nerve is struggling. I'm going to keep it simple, and I think what I'm going to start to try to do is some video case studies for you guys to connect dots of like specific examples of different kind of key health considerations. So I'm going to try to work on one for the vagus nerve. So stay tuned for that. But microbial diversity is a big thing that we look at in this test. And a lot of people will have low diversity scores, and that can correlate with reduced vagal tone and increased sympathetic activation. Then a lot of times people will have short chain fatty acid producer. Those markers are going to be deficient a lot of times. We're looking at these key bacterial species that are responsible for producing butyrate and other short chain fatty acids that directly fuel the vagal tone. So, if we have deficiencies of these, that can deprive our vagus nerve of, crucial energy sources it needs. And then there can be dysbiosis patterns, specific imbalances between beneficial and potentially pathogenic bacteria can then create like this totally inflammatory environment. So there is a way to see like in the dysbiosis, like major gut inflammation. And if that's going on, it is going to dampen the vagal signaling. And then we also look at the keystone species. And so when those are depleted, these critical keystone species, it can disrupt the entire ecosystem that supports that proper enteric nervous system function. So, the fascinating piece of this connection is that it creates potential feedback loops. So it's like you got stuff ricocheting all around and inside of you, right? And but then the poor vagal tone really reduces your digestive enzyme secretion, your motility. This worsens the gut dysbiosis piece, right? And that further impairs the vagal tone. So, this is a situation, it sounds extreme, right? I've seen it a lot of times. But it helps explain why, if you've tried like any simple vagus nerve hacks, like the exercises or all the things people are showing you, here, try these 3 simple tips for your vagus nerve, right? And they show you like how to put your hands on your neck and all this stuff, right? And they're great. I mean, I'm not saying don't do them, but that you might notice that it's just either doesn't really help all that much, or maybe it provides some temporary relief, but it's not addressing the underlying terrain issues. We just have to remember that the vagus nerve innervates the entire digestive tract, including the gallbladder, which is why gallbladder function is often compromised when vagal tone suffers. So, additionally, I want to say the autonomic dysfunction, including SIBO. So, you may or may not know if you have it, but this more serious dysbiosis that I'm talking about, people have bloating and all kinds of problems, can totally be traced back to the vagus nerve issues, which is why, sometimes we have to like use certain herbal preparations that can help restore the proper heart rhythm through addressing the gut health and such. Then we've got like leaky gut, which directly impacts the vagus nerve and the enteric nervous system, the entire enteric nervous system. And that creates a situation where, you got to fix your gut. Like if you don't, your nervous system is not going to be able to properly be restored or repaired. So, we got to look at that. all those pieces, really fixing your gut will help fix your vagus nerve and your autonomic nervous system too. So that is really important. Right. So, when we identify specific microbial imbalances through this test, we can implement, the right targeted support to work with that inner terrain that we're seeing, what's showing up, and kind of reorganize it and turn it into a healthy ecosystem again, right? To support the gut health and the vagal tone and ultimately your whole system, right? Another piece that I find fascinating, because it's pretty common and people don't really always make this connection, is any kind of head injuries. Head injuries or structural considerations in your vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve exits the skull through the jugular foramen, and then it travels through the neck in close proximity to the cervical vertebrae and muscles before branching throughout the body. So this anatomical journey makes it particularly vulnerable to structural issues. So when someone experiences a head injury, whether it's a major concussion or even minor whiplash, several things can happen. The cranial bones can subtly shift, which can potentially compress the vagus nerve as it exits the skull. So cervical vertebrae can misalign and directly impinge on the nerve. Um, Even scar tissue can form around the vagus pathway, restricting its function. And then when you have muscle tension in the sternocleidomastoid and other neck muscles, this can create chronic compression. This is something I had to work on myself and still do. I have to pay attention to my cervical spine. I've had multiple concussions in my life, so I know this one well, and I'm so grateful to finally learn about this because it's helped me really tune in and stay connected to how I care for this piece of my health. But basically, these structural interferences act like kinks in a garden hose. So no matter how much water pressure you have, there's like a physical blockage and flow is going to be restricted. So similarly, no amount of breathing exercises or cold plunges or whatever people are saying out there can actually fully restore vagal function if there's this structural compression going on. So your vagus nerve is a physical structure that can literally get pinched along its journey from your brain to your gut. You can have the cranial misalignments at the skull base. You can have a lot of neck tension. I think a lot of people have a lot of neck tension from poor posture or past injuries. Also, I want to say one thing about hydration. Proper hydration plays a huge role here. Um, a lot of people aren't properly hydrated and they get out of alignment very easily too, and the tension and, because your fascia needs to be properly hydrated. And muscles move bones, right? So that's also a huge piece. And then rib cage restrictions can affect the nerve passage. Abdominal tension can compress the nerve pathways. So, you know, I think body work can become invaluable for people who are dealing with this and, finding a good modality that can help you address these things. Craniosacral is wonderful because it'll address the cranial bone alignment. Specialized massage, that focuses on fascial release. I'm not a big fan of getting the neck cracked by a chiropractor. I don't really like that approach. I think it's a little hazardous. So if you can work with a chiropractor who's not going to like crack your neck, but like help adjust you in a gentle manner and, kind of see where your spine is getting at, especially that cervical area. My chiropractor doesn't do that. She doesn't crack my neck. She does other things. So that's really great. But then you can also look for like someone who does like osteopathic manipulative treatments. Those are just a few, and they can help create the space for the vagus nerve to function properly again. Right. So while you're on your healing journey and maybe you've got major stuff going on in your gut, it's like a lot of people do, getting this type of body work support is really going to help you out. I've seen people who have struggled with chronic digestive issues or anxiety or even the heart rate variability problems. um, you know, they get a lot better improvements while we're working together, you know, after addressing these structural components or staying on top of them, like finding it out about your body and finding the right support and you know, staying on top of it while you're working on recreating the inner terrain. So I think, gentle body work, practicing proper posture, learning what movements you need to be doing to keep yourself in alignment, as well as like proper breathing. Those things definitely can create surprising digestive improvements. We don't need to throw a million supplements always. Like sometimes we really have to learn how to move our body properly. And when we can address the physical pathways, we're removing actual physical barriers to proper nerve function. So the key is to, work on both the structure and the terrain simultaneously. And this is huge. So, and then correcting those mineral imbalances and gut dysbiosis while removing any like physical impediments to proper nerve function. Okay, so there's a couple practicals here we can talk about. Some vagus nerve support strategies. They go beyond the usual recommendations for supporting vagus nerve health. And I'm picking the ones that I like the best. So I'm going to share my favorites. They're not the only ones, but singing, that's my personal favorite. So this is my favorite vagus nerve hack. The science backs it up beautifully. When we sing, and when I say sing, I mean like you are singing your heart out, right? You are controlling your breath in specific patterns. You're engaging the muscles of the soft palate and the pharynx. You're creating vibrations that directly stimulate vagal tone, and you're activating the social engagement system. So, you don't have to be a good singer. You don't have to perform. um, it doesn't matter. The point is just sing your little heart out. You can sing in your shower. I like to sing in my car when I'm driving alone, um, very loudly. And I love it because I do notice that I am practicing that breath control and really engaging those muscles. And, if I can sing every single day, I do. Some days I probably don't, but um, I have like a little routine, and the house is empty. I am singing and doing my chores. And it's wonderful because I really do notice some difference in, my body. So, yeah, cheers to singing in the shower and rocking it out in the car. Pick some songs that challenge you, that you have to learn better breath control. Um, yeah, it's really fun. Um, so that's a fun way to support your vagus nerve. So it's not all this like heavy stuff. It's can feel heavy, like some of what I shared, I know. And then another really simple one that I absolutely love, and I've had to use this a lot because I've had people with such difficult challenges, right? Like they've had a concussion or they have some kind of structural issue in their um, esophageal sphincter, or something going on that makes it difficult for them to take supplements or eat food, or they have a lot of sensitivities or whatnot. And I like to use essential oils on the mastoid bone, and I learned this through my colleague Jody Cohen, who her company is Vibrant Blue Oils. And I think this is like a lesser known strategy that every time I bring it up, it seems like no one has heard of it, but it is highly effective. And I have had clients use it and be so grateful for it. So the mastoid bone is located right behind your ear, and it provides a close access point to vagus nerve branches. So when you apply specific essential oils here, particularly prior to eating, kind of like you would take your digestive bitters prior to eating, right? It can have really profound effects. And the two oils that Jody has in her parasympathetic blend, which you could go and buy her blend. She has a wonderful video tutorial on, about it. And I think there's also some cool testimonials. But they're clove and lime. And clove oil contains eugenol, and that's been shown to modulate nerve receptors. And lime oil contains limonene, which has calming effects on the nervous system. So to implement this, if maybe you got those two separately, or you can also buy hers, you're just gonna I don't know how sensitive everybody is, but it's typically we recommend diluting it a little bit, maybe a little carrier oil. Just gently massage behind the ears on the mastoid process. If you don't know what this is, go to Vibrant Blue Oil's website, and Jody has a video showing you how to do this. It's really simple. Once you know, you know. And you can do this before your meals. You can also do it when you're stressed. It's wonderful. And it's just nice because you can carry this little bottle with you, say you're a woman, you carry it in your purse. It's a really simple thing to use. And so that's one of my things that I love to do and recommend. And then digestive bitters also help with vagal stimulation. So bitter compounds have a very profound effect on our vagal tone through the gut-brain axis. When bitter receptors on our tongue are activated, they trigger increased vagal nerve firing. And then that also helps enhance our digestive enzyme production and improves our gastric acid secretion, and then just really helps with better overall digestive function. So, there's a lot of different bitters out there. I'll put a link for my favorite in the show notes. I like the OG David Winston's formula, but there's a bunch. And you can take that before you eat. So, if you can do it anywhere between 5 and 15 minutes. And if you're new to them, just start low, like 5 or 10 drops, just, then you can get it on the tongue. Like you really want to let your tongue sense the bitters before you don't want to just like shoot them down really fast. Like just, put them in your mouth, swirl it around a little bit, on your tongue to hit those bitter receptors. And that will stimulate this response that we're trying to get, right? These aren't just like stomach acid boosters or whatever. They're actual nerve communication enhancers. Let's call it that. And so it doesn't just improve your digestion directly, but it strengthens the vagal pathways over time. Right. So this is something you need to do over time. And we would have eaten way more bitter foods pre-industry. I talked about this in past episodes. And spring is a particularly rich time for the bitter plants coming back. And anyways, so I'm always trying to get people to make bitters their best friend. So definitely check out the link for my favorite ones in the show notes. And if you haven't started working with bitters, it's a very awesome support for so many reasons. And then, of course, you got to talk about omega-3 fatty acids. It seems like everyone's talking about these ad nauseum, but the neurons that make up your vagus nerve are largely composed of omega-3 fatty acids. So, you want to be making sure you're getting adequate omega-3 intake in your diet. You can do this through food. You can do this through supplementation. I think many people need to while they're working on their diet. And I don't think we need to like for all of eternity, but I think they play a role for many people while they're getting themselves sorted out, right? And they can just provide the building blocks needed for proper nerve function and repair. So, I'll include a link to a gut specific omega-3 fish oil that I like in the show notes for you. And then what's also cool is if you really want to know more, there are at home omega tests, really simple little tests you can get shipped to you and you can do at home to determine your current, fatty acid status and then kind of see more like what your needs are. So I'll include a link for that as well in the show notes. So these approaches can help remind your body of its innate intelligence rather than simply supplementing what's missing or trying all these hacks all the time, right? The vagus nerve is the rest and relaxation nerve. And when we consistently support it, we can help restore its proper function, which ultimately does so much for us. So when we look at the vagus nerve, through this lens, right? Like everything that I've just shared with you, when we examine your mineral patterns, when we can examine your gut microbiome status, even the mycotoxin burden, which I didn't go deeply into that in this episode. I'm planning a series this summer on all of that, so stay tuned for that. But, if you have a mycotoxin burden going on, that's definitely going to be a piece of the puzzle as well. And just like kind of assessing your own structural considerations, and just implementing more full spectrum approach, you can really achieve much more profound and lasting improvements than with some of these simple little exercises that are floating around out there. Right. So we always want to look at the whole picture, not just pick isolated little things, because our bodies function as an interconnected ecosystem, right? And so that's where the true healing comes from, is identifying and addressing what are the causes of the dysfunction going on in your ecosystem, right? So if any of this has resonated with you and you are looking for deeper support on your health journey, I invite you to check out my Work With Me page on my website. It's in the show notes. You'll find details about my approach to mineral balancing and microbiome optimization, the two key pillars that we discussed today that can have such profound effects on vagus nerve function and, obviously your overall health. And over there, you'll find where you can also book a discovery call directly through my website if you'd like to explore whether working together might be a good fit for your specific health challenges. So during these calls, we can chat about, what's going on in your body, what it is you need help with, and how, comprehensive testing through the mineral analysis and the microbiome assessment can reveal, some of the underlying patterns contributing to your symptoms. Just as we explored with the vagus nerve function today. So I find that the most effective approach is to assess your unique terrain, and identify where your biggest challenges are, and then systemically address them. Because usually they are very foundational issues, right? And, this might mean tackling what mineral imbalances we see, or, clearing mycotoxins, healing your gut dysbiosis. I do talk about the body piece with my clients. I feel like almost every client needs to address structural issues to some degree. So when we restore harmony to the entire ecosystem of our body, vagal tone naturally improves and the benefits cascade throughout our entire physiology. So, this holistic approach, it does require more patience and personalized investigation than the quick hacks, right? The little quick fixes that we all want, right? But then we get frustrated by, because we're still doing all these hacks and quick fixes and not really getting anywhere, right? So the results are far more profound and lasting when we, really take the time to get personalized and investigate and see what's going on and, do the deeper repair work, right? Well, I appreciate you all joining me today. I hope this episode has given you a deeper understanding of the vagus nerve and some practical steps for supporting its function within the context of your whole body health. All right, guys, until next time, take care of that amazing ecosystem you call home, your body.